Hi everyone, it is me Gideon and welcome to this next episode in my creative journey. This is week number 9 and my creative prompt for you this week is to play with rubbing alcohol and using it to create amazing foundational backgrounds to your artwork. So a number of you have asked me in the past how I created some of the textures in my paintings that you see all around me. You might have seen some of my TikTok videos where I show some of my process videos and you were curious on what I was dripping on the canvas. Well, today I'm here to show you exactly what it is and how to use it. So join me now in my studio as I show you how I created this beautiful page in my art journal and how to achieve this interesting background that you see on this page. So without any further ado, let's get to it. Hi, my name is Gideon. I'm also known as Gideon Slight. Welcome to my studio, and I'm your creatively fit coach. So join me now. Right, you guys, I've already prepared the page in my journal. I have given it a coat of acrylic paint. On this side, I've used Montmartre Dimension Acrylic Premium Cream. And on this page, I've used the Iris Acrylic Van Dyke Brown. I am going to be playing with my raw umber as well. I've got a palette here, I've got a brush, and I've got a pipette. Now a pipette can just make your life a lot easier to gather water or to draw the rubbing alcohol from the bottle so that you can then drip it on your page. So for me, this is an essential tool that you can invest in. You can find it at your local art supply store. And then I just have some water here that I will need for this process. And then last but not least, I wanted to show you I'm using Dala acrylic matte glaze medium, but I also have the same one in a gloss. You can use either one, they work perfectly fine. I've just dispensed it into a previous bottle. So when you see me use this one, I've marked it. This is the matte one. I've just dispensed it into my bottle. Right. Now, if you want to play with this technique, I really suggest, if you're going to work in your art journal, that you prepare your page with an acrylic ground of some sort. Any color in acrylic range will do to just seal your page, because you want that to be your first layer. You can also do a gesso underneath, but you will have to seal it with your acrylic medium. This is really important, I think, if you want to use this technique either in your diary or on a canvas, any surface really, to prepare your canvas and your surface with an acrylic ground, because it really seals your page. And if you're going to use multimedia or you're going to do multiple layers of this technique on top of each other, I really do suggest that you seal each layer after it dried with an acrylic medium before you do another layer, because you want to seal that alcohol in that layer that has sort of evaporated, but it does form a bit of a chemical bond on your surface. So if you repeat the process without sealing it, you will just activate any remaining alcohol on the bottom layer, and you might just move some things around. So just be mindful of that you cannot do more than one sort of application of this technique on a page without sealing each consecutive layer. But we're going to keep things really simple today. I'm going to be demonstrating to you how I'm going to play with this technique in my journal, and then I'm going to just grab my scrap bag a little bit later, and I'm just going to add some collage elements to make an interesting composition on this page. Right. So the first thing that I will suggest that will make your life a lot easier in this technique in the beginning is to think of the design principle of contrast. So I'm going to be using this creamy color in my technique over the dark base, and I'm going to use this raw umber over the lighter page so that you can clearly see how the cells form and what sort of action we're going to get out of this very exciting and fun technique. Right, forgive me for clearing my throat. Let me have a sip of my coffee. Right, so let's start with this dark page. I'm going to be dispensing a little bit of my creamy color. Now you don't need a lot of paint because you are going to be diluting it quite a bit with water. So I'm just going to slowly add some water from my bucket here and get this paint diluted, because this is a heavy body acrylic paint and I don't want any chunky pieces. And I also want it to smear relatively easy on my page. Now the important thing is the water that you add to your paint is going to react with the alcohol, and that is how the alcohol is able then to move your paint out of the way. Let's just get this little piece of solidified paint out of the way. Okay, I'm just gonna scrape it off there. There we go. It's always handy to have a kitchen towel or a wet wipe handy. Okay, so a little bit of preparation, but here we go. I'm going to apply a layer of this creamy color onto my dark brown page. I did put some wax paper into my journal on the previous pages just to protect my previous art installations that I've already put into my page. I'm just making sure my brush is nice and juicy as I spread my paint around, making sure that I work fast so that the paint does not have a lot of time to dry, because you want this to be a watery surface. Now you can play with the texture and the lines here as well, but that's not going to be the main focus. Right, so once you've got your layer of paint on there, moving fast, I'm going to use my rubbing alcohol and my pipette. I'm going to soak up a little bit of alcohol and watch carefully as I drip the alcohol on this page. Now sometimes, especially with an opaque color like this, it can give you a little bit of what shall we call it, a no-go zone. So we have some texture there, but I'm not entirely happy with that process. So you know what, I'm just going to add a little bit more water and I'm just going to work this through again. This is the fun thing about techniques, is you learn as you go, and sometimes things don't always happen the way you want them to happen. Plus, I've dropped my pipette in my alcohol. Luckily, I've got a lot of them at hand. I'm just repeating the process because I want that dark brown in the bottom to come out a little bit more. And because I added a little bit more water, I was able to get some nice cellular movement on my page. So we still have some texture and some movement that happens. So I'm not going to disturb that any further. Let's try it again on this page. Now, let's see how this raw umber is going to work. It's all new to me, in fact. I haven't even broken the seal yet. There we go. So I'm going to dispense a little bit of my raw umber. I'm going to get my brush and we are going to dilute this paint with plenty of water. That's quite a nice chocolatey brown. Let's add a bit more water. You don't want the paint to be too thick, so it's a very thin layer of paint that you want to add on top of your previous prepared page. Now this is, like I said, just acrylic paint that dried. I didn't seal that, and maybe you will get better results if you seal it first, because that binder really creates a see-through layer that the alcohol and the next layer of paint can then float on, but the principle will remain the same. So really this is all about fun, and it is also about experimentation. Right, let's get to it. You can also, a tip, I've just used this bottle with water. You could also just add a bit of a mist of water on there, just to make sure that you have a very nice layer of water on your page that the paint can float on, so that when you add the alcohol, it pushes the paint away. There we have a nice layer of paint. You can see it's quite see-through. Let's grab our rubbing alcohol again. And here we go. Yes, I like it. This is a lot of fun, and I enjoy this technique quite a bit in the foundational layers of my painting, because it creates these beautiful random marks. It literally pushes the paint away to the side, and then as the alcohol evaporates, the paint begins to dry and you have these interesting organic shapes that is happening on your page. So I'm going to pause my video recording now, and I'm going to dry this with my hair dryer. Then I will demonstrate to you how I seal this with the acrylic binder, and I think we might do a repetition on this page to show you how we can layer this up. So I'll be right back. Right, now that I've dried my page, it is very important, and also one of the secrets of acrylic paint, if you are new to acrylic paint and playing with acrylic paint in your diary, then or in any shape or form really, one of the tips I can give you is to always make sure that the layer that you've worked on is completely dry before you try something new or add another layer on top. And it's this layering ability of acrylic paint that is so phenomenal. Alright, I'm going to be using my acrylic matte glazing medium. I've just dispensed it into another bottle so that it's a little bit easier for me. And really, what is acrylic medium? It is basically your acrylic paint without the pigment. So this acrylic medium is in all of your acrylic products in some shape or form. So it really is a PVA plastic kind of base binder, and it is what makes acrylic paint so revolutionary, because it encapsulates the color pigments. It makes it a lot safer to work with, and you have all of this ability to add more layers on top of the other, and its ability to dry quickly on you. So I'm going to add my acrylic medium on top of my previous layer, and I'm just going to use a brush that I've activated with a little bit of water just to make it easier to spread the acrylic medium. And you basically just paint a layer of this acrylic medium over your page or your canvas. It doesn't have to be so thick. I was very liberal. So I'm just going to spread some of this onto my tissue. There we go. I'll also make sure I get it into my little crease between the two pages, so that when I work with another layer, it doesn't seep through to my other pages. I really have gone quite liberal here. Oh, some days. Sometimes I put too little, sometimes I put too much, but you know, it's okay. I'm not always used to working on this small scale, so I'm used to working on bigger canvas, and that's why I sometimes overestimate how much product I will need in order to give it a good coat of acrylic medium. Right, so now I'm going to dry this again, and then we'll try one more time. So I'll be right back. Okay, so that layer of acrylic medium is now dry, and this is now giving me a brand new surface to work on, and I'm going to try to really bring out a little bit more of a cell shape on this first page. So I thought, I do like what's happening already. I think it's interesting. It will give a bit of a background that will be interesting for a collage. So I thought, let's get some gold going on this page. Why not? Because the gold is already quite translucent as a metallic paint. So this is just the gold from Iris. And again, I'm going to add a little bit of water to my paint so that it's not so thick. There we go. And I do like this first spritz or two of water on the page. That is already giving me a layer for the paint to float on. Now let's add this bit of gold onto this page. So that's going to bring that to life very nicely, giving it a nice coating of the gold. And we're going to go straight for the alcohol before it dries. I'm working fast because the air conditioner is running in my office. And again, it looks like I'm not having a lot of joy on this page. You know what? It's really not the end of the world. Let's grab a wet wipe. I want to show you the importance of drying an underneath layer on your page, because this is real-time realness here on my page. Love the gold, but you know, it's just not working for this video. So let's wipe that off, because remember, everything on the underneath is dry and is sealed, so I am able to go over it and wipe it off. So give me a sec, let me just dry this page again with my hairdryer. I think the universe is saying, go back to your original shade, and I think I'm going to use this Van Dyke brown, which was on the underneath, and let's give that a go. Maybe that's what we need, is a little bit of that, but I am going to add some gold to it as well. The amount of water that you add to your paint really is important. It can't be too thick. So don't be shy, but you also don't want to baptize your page. So a bit of water is always helpful, because it is about the alcohol moving the paint, and it needs a little bit of that water in the paint in order to have a nice reaction, because the alcohol and the water are opposites. Right, let's add a bit more water to this page so that we are sure there's a layer of water. That looks a little bit better. Adding my paint to it, that there's a bit of a flow happening. There we go. Okie dokie, holding thumbs. Here we go again, and now I've got 2 pipettes inside my alcohol. I keep dropping them in there. And yes, we have lift off. We have an interesting movement. We have some cells happening. We have some patterns developing. That's exactly what I was hoping for. Success, 3rd time lucky on this particular page. So I'm just going to allow that to dry. I think let's try again with the gold, because it has to work. I'm going to do some gold over this page, just giving a bit of warmth and a bit of glam to the background, so that later when we work on top of it, there's some interesting things happening. Let me rinse my brush. There we go. Bringing plenty of water this time to my gold pigment. So you can see what I mean with play, experimentation. There's no guarantees with any technique that it will work every single time. So you've got to see, because the conditions in your studio might be different to mine. Right now I'm here in Africa, and the end of summer, it's really hot today. The air conditioner is running on my studio, and all of these things affect how the paint will behave, how the alcohol will influence it, and what will happen. So you've got to be aware of the conditions in your studio, the atmospheric conditions of the season that you are in, and you have to sort of, adjust accordingly. That's just one of the things that we learn as artists. Right, so now I'm sure that I've added enough water as a base, and yes, I like that immediate separation that happens when I add the alcohol on top. And even though it's not as obvious because the contrast is less, I do have some interesting cells that have developed here. I'm just closing my bottle, because make sure that you are working in a well ventilated space, because the alcohol fumes can sometimes be a little bit overwhelming. So do take care that you don't injure yourself. It's not that serious, but you will smell the alcohol fumes is a bit intense in a closed small room, right? So we're going to allow this to dry. I'm going to give it a good time to just dry naturally, so that I don't disturb any of these cells. And when I come back, I'm just going to use my scrap bag and use some of those elements on this page to create an interesting page in my journal. Right, so this page is, well, these pages have dried, and I've also sealed them one more time with an acrylic binder or medium, same thing, just a different word. And I just wanted to come in a bit closer so that you guys can really appreciate the interesting and beautiful organic texture that this technique can offer you as a technique in your artwork. I absolutely love how the gold has now finally cooperated, and it's given us a beautiful, interesting, organic texture that we can play with. So I have grabbed my scrap bag and I'm going to be showing you how I use these 2 pages as a collage installation in my art journal. Exciting! I just grabbed my glue stick. Just want to get comfortable here behind the desk. And I always just remind everyone, if you do use your wax paper to separate your pages, just make sure that you lift them away so that they don't stick to your page. Especially if you've had a bit of a liquid technique like we've just done today. Right, so now what is a scrap bag? Everyone is wondering. Well, unless you have a collage practice, you might not know what a scrap bag is. So this is my scrap bag. It can look different for other artists, but you know, all of my torn papers and little bits that is left over from previous collage exercises, I dump them in here, and it becomes an interesting, almost like a scratch patch for me to find some collage elements that is interesting to play with. And because I create my own papers and things like that as well to play with, it really becomes a beautiful library that you can always then go back in, and you can color coordinate it. You can have a bag full of brown papers, a bag full of red papers, etc., so that it's easier for you to find something that could work in your collage. Now, last week I showed you guys when we played with the jelly plate, I showed you how to create beautiful prints like these on the tissue paper and on a variety of paper. And now that I have all of these papers, I definitely want to play with them in my art journal. So I've brought these, what I mean with some elements, it's like little pieces of paper. This is sheet music. This one is from a Buddhist temple that I got as a gift. It's really these papers that they burn as an offering. It's just really beautiful prayer papers that they burn. I have some more of my jelly prints from last week. I have a piece of text from an old book that I've stained. I've got a little bit of a card here from a cardstock out of one of my journals. More papers that I created myself, really interesting little things that came out of my scratch bag. So because they all sort of work in this color theme palette that we've got going here, I thought let's continue to play with these, and I'm going to create a beautiful art journal installation for myself. So I'm not going to be talking a lot because I want to think about my composition and what I want to do in creating this page in my journal. So I'm going to pause my video, organize my thoughts, and when we come back I will do this collage for you, and I will also speed it up so that you can get through the process faster and see the end result with me. well, there's been some developments in this page. I have added some elements that's really lovely, but now I'm just going to bring a little bit of contrast to this little element that I have added to my page just for some interest. And I literally got this out of one of my coloring books, and they've got these small little elements in the back of the coloring book, and they're really just too small to stand alone. Well, on the page there's a few of them, so I decided that this would be a great little element that I can tear out and use as a collage focus or element that would make things a little bit interesting. So I cut them out, and now I'm using them in my diary, and this way I get to use all of it and enjoy all of it. And yeah, I quite like the text in an oriental fashion. It's just one of my personal elements that I absolutely enjoy is Shamanic writing, or to use oriental symbols in my designs, because I'm quite fond of how they look. I love the vibe that they bring into it, and also because I am a Reiki practitioner, I do like using my Reiki symbols in my personal journey. In my personal journal, it's almost like a meditation for me to draw in my art journal and just to remember the things that is important for me, that makes my life worth living, and that helps me to have a positive attitude and to rise above the challenges that show up in my life. And I find that spending time in my art journal and in my art studio is my way of processing everything that is happening in my world, and it also gives me an opportunity to just express myself, to be myself fully without editing or asking for permission, and just to enjoy, because when we go out in the world there's rules to abide to and expectations of everyone around us. So in your art studio, in your art journal, that's definitely one place where you can give yourself permission to be 100% you all the time. And that is why I think this is such a powerful way to practice all kinds of things, from meditation all the way through to technique like we did today. And there you have it. I have completed this week's page in my journal. It was just such a lot of fun to create this background and to play with all of these collage elements to create this beautiful installation on my page. And I just wanted to show you again the rubbing alcohol that I used and the acrylic mediums that I used to seal my layers with. And if you're interested in the pages that I created in the background, do check out my playlist with my weekly HeART prompts, because last week we played with a jelly plate and I created some beautiful elements that you see on my page today. So thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you again next week for another episode in my Creative HeART Prompt series. Bye bye for now.